Last night marked the first official meeting of white dudes for Kamala. There were celebrity guests. We'll get to them. There were silly and alternately disturbing arguments. We'll get to them. But first, I want you to close your eyes. Imagine the platonic form of the white dude for Harris. The absolute ideal. Now make him even more of a caricature. Whatever you are thinking, just make it worse. Now open your eyes.
And that happens at the same time as the myths around America that we grew up with, that we as men are expected to be protectors and providers, are going out into an economy that doesn't really allow for that, especially for working class folks. And sort of like compounding on that, masculinity as a trope has been co-opted by the MAGA right into something that feeds into and exacerbates the loneliness epidemic, as well as the mental health crisis that many face that end up leading to really destructive behaviors. We aren't the only ones that are hurt by these things. Black and brown people, LGBTQIA plus people, especially trans women and indigenous people, and all sorts of other folks in our society who've been historically and often still today are marginalized and being hurt, demonized, and marginalized even further.
Am I right, bro? What do you say, white dudes? Y'all in for Harris? Sorry. Now, if that Mr. Vocal Fry Man Bun did not convince you, just wait until you hear what fellow white dude for Harris, Pete Buttigieg, had to say. I'm Michael Knowles, a white dude for Trump, and this is the Michael Knowles Show. After international outrage at the decision by the Olympics to mock Christ in the opening ceremonies, the Olympics Committee has fake apologized for it. We will get to their fake apology in a second. First, though, as a DailyWire Plus member, you get uncensored, unfiltered, ad-free shows, the latest breaking news, and more. Join the fight now at dailywire.com/subscribe. Now, one thing, when you're subscribing to DW, you want to make sure you got all your finances in order. That's why you want to check out Zero Debt USA. Go to zapmydebt.com. Do you ever think, how can I work this hard and still be in debt? The piles of overdue bills, the threatening phone calls. If you're trapped in debt, Zero Debt USA is the way out. They've developed aggressive new strategies to end your debt permanently. Zero Debt USA stands between you and the bill collectors. They negotiate with creditors to lower or even forgive what you owe, all without bankruptcy. Bottom line, Zero Debt USA has powerful strategies that zap your debt quickly so you have more money in your pocket every month. But you need to hurry because some debt solutions are time sensitive and you do not want to miss out. Go to zapmydebt.com, talk with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Find out how fast they can get you out of debt. That is zapmydebt.com, zapmydebt.com. I know that debt can lead to all sorts of anxiety. It can leave you tossing and turning at night. You can get those annoying phone calls. It can really weigh on people. Yes, the system is designed to do that. So you need to use every tool at your disposal to get out of it. Right now, I'd strongly recommend you go to zapmydebt.com. The white dudes for Harris was everything I thought it would be and more. And more. Some of the arguments that these people were making were so farcical, not even I would have predicted them. Had I written some of these arguments down in a Hollywood screenplay, turned it into some Hollywood producer, he would have said, Michael, it's too on the nose. You got to make it a little bit more subtle than that. Here is Pete Buttigieg explaining why men need to support someone like Harris, specifically because of her stance on abortion.
I'm so glad she has made freedom the theme of her campaign, because I think in so many ways that's what's at stake. And yes, women's freedom is Exhibit A after Donald Trump demolished the right to choose. But of course, men are also more free in a country where we have a president who stands up for things like access to abortion care.
actually, forget about the women. Men are way more free when women can kill their babies. You see, because the men can then have promiscuous and unaccountable sex with those women. That's right. The men can go out and just use the women for their own sexual gratification, and then they can pressure them to murder the babies that are sometimes conceived so that the men can go out and use and abuse even more women. Isn't that great, guys? Put another nickel in the Pete is not conspiracy theory jar. I've always taken Pete at his word that he is a homosexual. However, I have some friends, including a homosexual friend of mine, Spencer Clavin, who has said for a long time that Pete Buttigieg is not really, that's his favorite conspiracy theory. And I said, I don't know, man, I don't know. And he said, no, I'm telling you, and his argument was that Pete Buttigieg, I've met many people like this, he's a real striver. He was a Harvard guy, real ambitious. I mean, for goodness sakes, the guy went from being mayor of some town in Indiana to being the transportation secretary pretty much based on nothing. He decided he was going to run. He was going to be mayor of a small town and then just run for president. And he actually did pretty well. So he's a real striver. He's real ambitious. And but he has this problem, which is he's a straight white guy. Again, I'm not saying he's a straight white guy. I'm saying this is the conspiracy theory. He's a straight white guy. So he's got this problem, right? He's over there at Harvard. He says, shoot, man, I'm not going to rise very far in liberal politics if I'm the most evil type of person in the world, a straight white guy. So I need something. I need some struggle. And I know a white guy who's married to a woman who identifies as queer. In fact, I know multiple straight white guys who call themselves non-heterosexual or non-straight or whatever. So I am taking Pete Buttigieg at his word that he has same-sex attraction. However, if this is his best argument for Harris, hey guys, hey bros, we can all go out there and just a bunch of women and then we won't have to do anything about it because there won't be any accountability. Then I don't know, man, that really actually changes my view of Pete Buttigieg for the worse. The other guys were Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker. He helped organize it, I guess. Buttigieg, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Adam Schiff, whom Donald Trump calls pencil neck. He's the congressman from California. A bunch of people I've never heard of. David Hogg. That pinnacle of white masculinity, David Hogg, a bunch of other people I've never heard of. Josh Groban, I have heard of him. The dude was there, Jeff Bridges. So, there were a number of people, and they're all embracing their identity as white men. And this is something that the Democrats can do and the Republicans can't do. The Republicans will not appeal to white men. Even though white men are the group most likely to vote Republican, white men are the indispensable group for the Republican political coalition. Republicans refuse to make an overt appeal to white men because they are afraid of Democrats calling them racist and sexist, even though by any even semi-reasonable definition of racism and sexism, the Democrats would fit the bill far more than the Republicans. Doesn't matter. That's just not how it works. A racist is by the definition that the Democrats have set, a Republican. A sexist is by the definition the Democrats have set is a conservative. So they refuse to do it. But Democrats are exhibiting a really keen political insight right here. And the keen political insight is you only get to the universal through the particular. You only win national elections by winning particular states, and you only win particular states by winning particular counties, and you only win particular counties by appealing to particular demographics, and you only appeal to particular demographics by making overt promises and appeals to races, sexes, religions, civic associations, industries, affinity groups, Star Wars fans. You get Mark Hamill to do your white dudes for Harris. That's how you win national elections. And Republicans don't really seem to get that. We want to jump straight to the universal. So Republicans say we would never host a white dudes for Harris or white dudes for Trump event. One, because we're so afraid of the Democrats disingenuously calling us racist. But two, we don't want to appeal to identity politics, you know? We just want to we just say we're Americans for Trump. You know, we're everybody for Trump, everybody for good things. Yeah, of course, we want national unity. We want to work in accord with one another. We want social harmony. We want our politics to advance the common good, of course. But the way that you win elections in a democratic society, this is maybe one of the shortcomings of democratic society, is you have to make overt appeals to particular groups. That's the only way that you're ever going to achieve any kind of universal political power. Democrats are getting it. Democrats openly despise white men. And yet, when election time comes, they're going to assemble those white men together and they're going to tell the white men why it's in their white man interest to vote for Kamala Harris. So Buttigieg has taken a pretty aggressive role in the Kamala Harris campaign. Buttigieg went on the Fox News show, the Sunday show, so this is ostensibly hostile territory, and he went on there to defend Harris, not in his role in the Biden administration, not in his role as transportation secretary. He went on as a private citizen endorsing Harris.
Joining us, also fresh off the campaign trail, Pete Buttigieg. He's appearing today in his personal capacity, so no disrespect that we aren't using your cabinet title, but you are here as Pete today. Right. Okay, so you've been on the trail.
This is your personal capacity. Now, she's opening up with that. Shannon Bream is making that point off the top, presumably because that's what Pete Buttigieg requested. Ordinarily, if Buttigieg goes on a news show, he's there as the transportation secretary, which says, we have to make clear you're here as a private citizen today. Because he's not advancing any work of the White House or the administration or the American people writ large. He's there advancing Pete Buttigieg's personal career interest to support Kamala Harris, perhaps even over the objections of people at the White House. Maybe that's why he's trying to distance himself from his official role here. Because why? Because Pete Buttigieg wants to be Kamala's running mate. That's why. And why would Pete Buttigieg want to be Kamala's running mate? Because whatever you think of Buttigieg, I think the guy is just awful. I think he's really one of the worst people in public life. However, you got to admire the hustle. This is one of the greatest careerists I have ever seen. The guy went from basically having never done anything to being the mayor of a small town to being in a presidential cabinet. That is crazy. That is really, really impressive. And now he wants to leapfrog it again. He's been one of the worst transportation secretaries we've ever had, which is impressive because most people don't even pay attention to the transportation secretary. But we have had historic transportation problems at the national level under Buttigieg's reign. Major train accidents, major airplane problems, major transportation issues. Meanwhile, what is Buttigieg doing about it? He's complaining about the supposedly racist bridges in Long Island. He's not doing anything to fix these problems. So he's failing at a job at which it is almost impossible to fail, and he might be Kamala's running mate. And he might be Kamala's running mate in part because it seems like Gretchen Whitmer doesn't want it. The governor of Michigan seems like Gavin Newsom doesn't want it. And they don't want it because I think that they actually do have some real political seasoning under their belt. I think they're looking ahead to 2028. They're saying, look, maybe Kamala's going to lose this time. I want to keep my powder dry so that I can be a leader of the party next time after 4 years of Trump. Buttigieg, he doesn't really have all that much going on. He's glib and articulate enough on TV. But that's it. He's got to keep this career train going. He is all in for Kamala. Now, one way that Kamala might win the election is that the election would appear to be rigged by big tech, specifically Google. Elon Musk has posted a lot about this on X. When you try to search for President Trump, first of all, you don't get an autofill of all sorts of nice results that you would get for other search terms on Google. But second of all, what will pop up is news about Kamala and Trump. When you search for Kamala Harris, you do get all that autofill and you get news specifically for Kamala Harris. So Google is rigging the election. And I was told about this by someone who's got a lot of credibility on the issue, who's really poked into Google, and that would be Dr. Robert Epstein. Dr. Robert Epstein is the former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today. He sat down with me during a Michael and to discuss how big tech can control election outcomes, even the beliefs of people worldwide. Check out this teaser.
We published a landmark study in which we show bias in Google search results can change people's views about anything at all.
How bad is it?
I gave a briefing, a private briefing. A few minutes later, one of them walked out. I know exactly who it was, and he walked up to me and said, Dr. Epstein, based on what you just told us, I predict you're going to be killed in some sort of accident in the next few months. But a few months later, my beautiful, amazing wife was killed in a horrendous car accident.
Are you deterred at all?
Yes. Then there's another part of me, which is the science guy. Every single thing we do is relevant to everything that's happening right now.
Right.
With the algorithms shifting the views of people who are undecided on some issue or other around the world by the billions.
Now what?
We are fucked, okay?
The full episode is now available at the Michael Knowles YouTube channel and on Spotify and on X. Subscribe to all of those and watch the ad-free version on DailyWire Plus. Now, speaking of Kamala Harris and the presidential campaign, Kamala is attacking Trump's VP. Kamala and the entire liberal establishment is attacking J.D. Vance, and they're attacking him in a particular way. They're calling him weird. That was the tweet from Kamala HQ. J.D. Vance is weird and creepy. Press release. J.D. Vance is a creep. Parentheses, who wants to ban abortion nationwide. So it opens up with this childish, really nasty personal attack. And then only in the parenthetical do you get any kind of political issue. J.D. Vance's obsession with controlling women's most personal health decisions, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's all about we love abortion. That's Pete Buttigieg's argument. Ha ha, guys, vote for Kamala Harris and you can pressure your girlfriends to kill your kid. Ha ha. You know, that's really what they're running on. And Kamala has been extreme on abortion. She's prosecuted a friend of mine, David Daleiden, who exposed that the abortion industry was illegally selling baby body parts. You know, I mean, if she cares about any issue, it is this. It is killing babies. She absolutely loves it. So they're attacking JD, but it's really not even about the issue that they try to tie it in. It's really about how he's weird. J.D. Vance is weird. Okay, is J.D. Vance weird? I don't find J.D. Vance weird at all. I find J.D. Vance actually to be one of the most refreshingly normal candidates we've had in public life. I found his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, to be refreshingly normal and representative of the experiences of a lot of the American people. I find his view on public policy to be refreshingly normal. He's not some crazed ideologue on the left, you know, the ones who have this bloodlust for babies, for instance, or the ones who want to erase our national borders like Kamala Harris does, or the ones who want to stumble us into World War III like Kamala Harris does, or the ones who wanted to destroy our economy because of their own hobby horses like Kamala Harris does, or even the ideologues on the right, you know, the ones who seem to think that the purpose of society is to serve the great god of GDP or something. The ones who refuse to look at the actual conditions of American life in favor of abstractions about the economy or you know, liberty with a capital L or anything like that. J.D. Vance I find to be refreshing in that he says, hey, look, we want to have a robust economy, and so we want policies that are conducive to economic flourishing, but we don't want that to be at the expense of actual American towns and families. You know, sometimes you can pursue economic policies that really undermine the main strength of the economy, which is the American people, and the main purpose of the economy, which is to serve the American people. So maybe we got to cool it with the outsourcing. Maybe we got to cool it a little bit with the free trade sometimes. Maybe we need to cool it with the open borders, which is undermining the American family. Maybe we actually do need a little government intervention sometimes to help support growing families. I find all that normal. But I thought J.D. Vance had an even better response than I had to this accusation that he's weird. This was his response in video form.
And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
She, her, and her? Mine too.
All right.
These are the people calling J.D. Vance weird. The kind of people who want to your kids, who think that men can be women, the kind of people who introduce themselves. They say, hi, I'm Kamala Harris. I'm a woman. She, her, and hers. These are the people who call J.D. Vance weird. The ones who celebrate, nudist marches in the streets, weird, dudes dressed up in leather spanking each other throughout the entire month of June in front of children. These are the people calling J.D. Vance weird. The ones who want to eliminate our national borders, flood the country with foreign nationals. They're the one. It's very silly. These are the people. These are some of the strangest people we've ever seen in the history of the United States. But so actually, it makes sense that they would call J.D. Vance weird. From the perspective of our liberal political establishment, J.D. Vance is very weird. Why? Because he is a normal-looking white guy. White guys are absolutely the bottom of the barrel, the most disgusting people on earth, according to the liberal establishment. That's why they've got it. They realize that's a liability. That's why they're appealing to them directly. But he's a normal-looking white guy who came from difficult circumstances, who worked really hard and raised his station in life and wants to help his fellow citizens. And he's married to a woman, and he has kids. He had children, and he's propagating the species. And that's just really, really weird. He made money in business. He worked in the private sector to help his family, and then he turned some of his gains to public service. That's just weird. In the Democrat view, you're supposed to identify as something that you are not. If you're going to engage in any kind of romance, it should be in the weirdest way possible. It should be with someone of the same sex, or 3 dudes and a billy goat or something. You should never have children. Why would you have children? That's crazy, according to our liberal establishment. If you're going to make money, you should make money in the public sector. You should milk what the portion of the society that's ostensibly for the common good. You should use that to enrich yourself. You should get on the Nancy Pelosi investing train, and then it's opposite day for the liberal establishment. That's what it's supposed to be. So when J.D. Vance does normal stuff, from the perspective of a really perverse elite, normal looks pretty weird. Now, you've heard the bloodlust for babies coming from the left, from the mainstream Democrat Party. That's why it is more important than ever to support organizations like Preborn. Go to preborn.com/Knowles. It's been over 2 years since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which was supposed to be a great victory for the pro-life movement, but the number of abortions has increased since then due to the fact that the abortion pill is now more available than ever. New estimates show that more than 1 million babies were aborted in 2023. The abortion pill accounted for over 60% of them. Preborn is currently providing free ultrasounds and life-saving resources to expectant mothers, helping them choose life for their babies. They are on the front lines offering support and hope to those facing unplanned pregnancies. Thanks to the DailyWire's partnership with Preborn, I'm excited to announce that we are able to make our powerful documentary, Choosing Life, available to all on DailyWire Plus. This film serves as a crucial counterpoint to the left's narrative on abortion, presenting the undeniable truth about the humanity of the unborn. It is available to you now, free of charge, at dailywire.com. Join me in thanking Preborn for bringing this important work out from behind our paywall. Consider making a donation today to support their life-saving work. You can sponsor one ultrasound for just $28. If you have the means, you can sponsor Preborn's whole network for a day for $5,000. I personally support this group. I strongly recommend you do it as well. Go to preborn.com/Knowles to donate today. Preborn.com/Knowles, or dial pound 250, say keyword baby. That is pound 250, keyword baby. Our political establishment, which is it views normal things as really, really weird. Our political establishment is the kind of political order that mocks the Last Supper. We covered this yesterday on the show. The Olympics opened up in Paris by mocking the Last Supper. And now there are some libs who are, I think, disingenuously trying to argue that it really wasn't a mockery of the Last Supper. No, it was a mockery of some 16th or 17th century Dutch painting about Cupid and Psyche, or else Dionysus, or else, some other Olympians. And it just wasn't. I went through on the show yesterday why that is obviously not the case, both from the perspective of artistic interpretation, but also from the perspective of history. And of course, there was a pagan element there, but that was the point. The point was to replace an image of Christianity in what was once called the eldest daughter of the church in France with a return of the pagan demons. So that obviously that was the point there. And they did all of this, and now they're fake apologizing. There was international outrage. Christians marching peacefully and beautifully and prayerfully, but still showing up saying this is completely unacceptable. At least one advertiser pulled out. We'll get to that in a second. There was so much international pressure that the Olympics had to address it. And here's how they addressed it. This, according to Anne Descamps, a Paris 2024 spokesman. Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. Oh, is that clear? It's not clear to me. It's actually clear to me that the opposite is true, that you did intend to disrespect Christians. She says, clearly, total gaslighting. Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. Christians, by the way, lady, you can use the word. The religious group that may not be named. Christian. No, it's Christians. No one accused you of disrespecting Muslims. You'd never do that because you're afraid you get your heads chopped off. No one's accusing you of disrespecting Hindus or Jews or Jains or Shinto or any other group. It's Christians that you disrespected. No, any religious group. We believe that our ambition of aiming to celebrate community tolerance was achieved. And if people have taken any offense, we are, of course, really sorry. Completely unacceptable. Completely. This is worse than had they not said anything at all. They did the thing. They did that thing that is so irritating that I'm sure you've all experienced before, which is, oh, well, I'm really sorry if you were offended. Oh, yeah. Oh, you were offended. I'm sorry that you were offended. Don't be sorry that I'm offended. Be sorry that you offended me. That's what you need to be sorry. You don't need to apologize for my feelings. You can't control my feelings. I'm not asking you to apologize for my feelings. I'm asking you to apologize for what you did, for the disgusting actions that you perpetrated, Olympics Committee. That's the problem here. My feelings aren't the problem. I guess my feelings are a problem, and the feelings of Christians worldwide are a problem for you now because you're getting so much backlash, and at least one of your advertisers is pulling out. And this is now probably the lowest watched Olympics, probably the lowest viewership ever relative to the size of the population. Yeah, that's a problem for you. But that's not the problem. The problem is that you mocked our Lord. That's the problem. That you put on a disgusting and sacrilegious display. That's why I am even less inclined than I previously was to watch the Olympics. That's why many people are tuning it out this year. So apologize for that. But they're not, no, we never intended to offend anybody. And what we wanted to do was celebrate tolerance by mocking Christ. And so, we did that and we didn't do anything wrong. And if you're offended, then I'm sorry for you. That sounds like it's a you problem. Okay. All right. Well, at least we know where you stand. We know that the Olympics hates Christ and disrespects Christianity. That's what we know. Even if there were some innocent mistake, just a little confusion of representation in that opening ceremony, this non-apology makes perfectly clear what they think of Christians. And so I think Christians should make perfectly clear what we think of the Olympics. I have no interest in watching 1 second of that. And I think any company that continues to advertise with the Olympics, and there are a lot of them, is making very clear that they don't have any respect for Christians. There's one company, at least, that's pulled out. C Spire is the largest privately held wireless company in the U.S. Very quickly reacted, said this display is disgusting, pulled their advertising from the rest of the games broadcast on NBC. I hope many other companies follow. C Spire is making clear, hey, we think it's wrong to disrespect God and to offend Christians. We think that's wrong. We're not going to support that. Every other company that's keeping their dollars in there is telling you exactly what they think of Christians. You know who else is telling you what they think of Christians? The First Lady of the United States, Jill Biden, who effectively is probably the president of the United States because her husband doesn't have a functioning brain anymore. Jill Biden came out and she called the Olympics opening spectacular.
It was spectacular. The rain did not dampen our spirits. And Casey, honestly, every step of the way, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, how are we going to top this? How are we going to top this? So Paris has the, Eiffel Tower, but We have Hollywood and the magic of Hollywood that makes all dreams come true. So I think we're going to be okay.
Spectacular. Oh, yes. When they mocked the apostles and our Lord at the Last Supper before his passion and crucifixion, I thought that was just wonderful, just marvelous. Boy, oh boy, wasn't that just great? That's First Lady of the United States, the wife of the supposedly devout Catholic Joe Biden, who manifestly is not a devout Catholic. He's not even a practicing Catholic because he violates non-negotiable aspects of his faith in public life. Happily, gleefully. It is not, if it wasn't clear previously, it should have been, but if it wasn't clear previously, it is not permissible for Christians to vote for Kamala Harris. It is not permissible for Christians to support with their votes the Biden-Harris administration. Perhaps the simplest way of understanding why that is the case is the sacramental view that they take of abortion. Their absolute defense of abortion, of murdering innocent babies in the womb, is sufficient reason to prove that it is not permissible for Christians to vote for them. That is one of those issues that we would call non-negotiable. The church has been clear about this. Certain issues, reasonable people can disagree. Pope Benedict XVI observed that reasonable people can disagree over the death penalty. Some Christians make an argument as to why the death penalty in the year of our Lord 2024 is not permissible. However, the church has taught for approximately 2,000 years that the death penalty is permissible and in some cases quite called for. And in fact, beatified popes have exercised the death penalty many, many times in the papal states. So Pope Benedict's argument was, this is one of those issues where reasonable people can disagree in good faith. However, murdering little babies is not one of those issues. From the earliest days of the church, the earliest church documents that we have, going back to the Didache, abortion is not permissible. Obviously, the Fifth Amendment, I'm confusing my Constitution and my commandments. The Fifth Commandment says that you shall not commit murder, so that alone should suffice. But this is even explained in the earliest days of the church. You just can't do it. Not acceptable. And we know that this is a central issue for Kamala Harris, maybe more so than it was for Joe Biden. This is the big pitch that Pete Buttigieg is making. Hey, white dudes, vote for Kamala. She's going to let you kill your babies. So this is not acceptable. And the fact that they would celebrate the overt mockery of our Lord is, I think, just if you were a little too thick-headed to understand it before, this is just one of those instances of political circumstances shaking you and saying, hey, buddy, if you are a Christian, you can't vote for these people. Now, what else does Biden have up his sleeve? Remember Biden? Joe Biden, not Jill Biden. Joe Biden, he's supposedly the president of the United States. Joe Biden says he's going to devote the remaining time in office to destroying the Supreme Court. He has a plan. He's going to radically revolutionize the Supreme Court. I don't know that Joe Biden's going to make it through breakfast most mornings, but he says he's going to undo the separation of powers. He's going to remake one of the supposedly co-equal branches of government. His plan involves 3 points. He wants to end life tenure for Supreme Court justices. Life tenure for Supreme Court justices is found in the Constitution. This has been how the Supreme Court has worked from the beginning of our country. Joe Biden wants to end that. After centuries, he wants to end it. He wants to inject electoral politics in an unprecedented way into the Supreme Court. He wants to institute a new ethics code for justices. So here we have, just as we previously saw, the legislative branch trying to exert domination over a supposedly co-equal branch of government by imposing an ethics code on the Supreme Court. Now you have the executive branch trying to do the same thing, saying, we control you. We're going to impose an ethics code on you that effectively makes you answerable to us. So the framers of the Constitution gave us separation of powers, co-equal branches of government. One branch doesn't get to dominate the other branches. Joe Biden's saying, yeah, forget about that. Forget about those framers. Forget about that Constitution. I am going to dominate through the executive branch. I'm going to dominate the Supreme Court. That's the second part. Third part is an amendment cracking down on presidential immunity. So he wants an amendment to imprison Trump because he knows that it's not legal for him to imprison his political rival. They weren't able to beat him at the ballot box or in the court of public opinion. It remains controversial whether they beat him at the ballot box in 2020, but looking ahead to the 2024 race, they haven't been able to beat him in the court of public opinion. So then they tried to prosecute him. And in an unprecedented move that makes Joe Biden look like this would-be dictator in Venezuela, Maduro, look like any tin pot dictator in a banana republic. He's trying to imprison his political rival. Then there was the assassination attempt, the rather odd assassination attempt that occurred just 2 days before the Republican National Convention, and which only was avoided by a last-minute, nanosecond early hair's breadth turn of the head that saved Trump's life. So they couldn't beat him. They couldn't imprison him. No one could kill him. So now Joe Biden is saying, I'm going to change the Supreme Court in order to lock up my political rivals. And Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, says that's not going to happen. So here's a reporter asking Biden about that on a tarmac.
Speaker Johnson said it's dead on arrival. And he is? How are you?
Might be a little bit hard to hear that. Biden's response to this is, he is. He's dead on arrival. My thing's not, he is. You are. We'll analyze that soaring, typically Biden-esque rhetoric in just a moment. First, though, Jeremy's Razors Christmas in July sale ends today. This is your last chance to get 25% off all razor trial kits at jeremysrazors.com. That includes the Precision 5 razor. It's been radically redesigned for an exceptionally smooth and close shave. Get the deal that couldn't wait for Christmas before it's gone. jeremysrazors.com for 25% off today. My favorite comment yesterday is from Sean Delap, 8587, who says, the footage was taken down from their own channel because they can't deal with the backlash they're receiving. This is the Olympics. That's interesting. I hadn't looked at the Olympics YouTube channel. I wouldn't be surprised, though. They believed that they could just keep pushing this further and further, and just now outright mock Christ in the opening to the Olympics. And they would get away with it because the libs have such cultural dominance. And that didn't quite work out this time. They did receive at least some modicum of backlash. And I think they should receive a lot more. I've never cared for the Olympics. I think the modern Olympic Games are obviously just some big lib nonsense. You know, it started with the advance of liberalism at the end of the 19th century, and it's always this, kumbaya, we are the world kind of stuff. I mentioned that on the show yesterday. The ancient games were just pagan rituals. They were actually pagan. I don't mean that in any shallow way. I mean they existed to pay homage to the pagan gods, and so I generally think that's not a great idea, especially after the revelation at Sinai, and then of course at the incarnation. I just think generally we ought to avoid honoring the pagan gods. So the Olympics do very little for me. There are plenty of great athletic leagues in America. It's fine. All the best athletes come to America to train anyway, so the whole thing is just a big farce. But now I see even less reason to pay attention to the Olympics. Mike Johnson, Republican Speaker of the House, says that Biden's plan to destroy the Supreme Court is dead on arrival. Joe Biden responds and says, I think he is dead on arrival, which to translate that into a little bit more elevated political rhetoric is, I am rubber and he is glue, and what he says bounces off of me and it sticks to you. But it is dead on arrival. For now, the Republicans barely, but they do control the House of Representatives. There has been one other attempt to do what Joe Biden is attempting to do, to fundamentally alter the Supreme Court to serve the whims of the executive branch. And that was by FDR. FDR was the American monarch. He upended the tradition set by George Washington of presidents only serving 2 terms. FDR was going to serve forever, and he ended up dying in office 4 terms. He was our king, and this was at a time in the West when there was a rise of these dictator figures, Mussolini, FDR, Mussolini, Hitler, and others. So there was this rise of real strongman politics that did away with constitutional inconveniences, and it was all happening in the 1930s. So it was not just about one man; it was about a political movement throughout the civilization, and FDR was our version of it. And so, as a strong-arm political figure, albeit one on the left, we usually think of them on the right because of how the liberal media lie, but ours was on the left. He wanted to destroy the Supreme Court, and he wanted to destroy the Supreme Court because the court kept shooting down his plans to revolutionize the federal government through his New Deal programs, and the court kept observing that his New Deal programs were unconstitutional. So FDR said, "Okay, well, I'm going to pack the Supreme Court, and I'm going to add a bunch of my judges to the court, and then the court is going to ratify all of my plans." And the only reason that this was avoided is because of an event that's referred to as the switch in time. So a switch in time saved nine justices. This was in 1937 in the case of, what was the name of the case? West Coast Hotel versus Parrish. West Coast Hotel versus Parrish. This was a 1937 case about a minimum wage law in Washington state. And throughout 1935 and 1936, this one judge, Owen Roberts, who was an associate justice on the court, kept being the deciding vote, the 5-4 votes to shoot down the New Deal programs. At the very end, in 1937, he switches sides. And he switches sides in order to give FDR what he wants so that FDR won't completely destroy the Supreme Court by packing it with his political cronies. So Biden wants to make himself a new FDR. He wants to make himself this new strongman, unbound by constitutional, limits and by the limits of our political tradition. I mean, he's a guy who's trying to imprison his political rival. This is something we really haven't seen in America, at least not a major political rival. You did have Wilson going pretty hard against Eugene Debs, but he was the socialist candidate for president. He only got 8% of the vote. Here you're talking about the Republican nominee for president, Donald Trump, who's actually the most popular candidate in the race. Biden trying to throw that guy in prison. He wants to make himself a king. He wants to make himself the new FDR. Difference is FDR had the juice, and Biden doesn't have the juice. FDR had a lot of political power. If you speak to people of a certain generation, even people who are conservative, they will speak of FDR with a great deal of respect, reverence, because he was a king in the way that the Brits speak of the monarchs. Biden doesn't have that juice. Biden doesn't know what his name is half the time. Biden doesn't know what end is up. So I suspect this will fail. I suspect Mike Johnson is right. But the desire here is exactly the same. Biden wants to reorder our federal government before he leaves. It's probably going to go as well as every other political initiative Biden's ever taken. How's he doing on that cancer moonshot? Did Biden cure cancer yet? Still waiting on that one. Speaking of high courts, good news coming out of the UK, and the UK, I guess. Good news coming out from the motherland. The UK High Court has officially banned puberty blockers. We covered this story early, some months ago, when the NHS decided they were going to stop prescribing puberty blockers for kids who identify as, they said this is terrible. There's no evidence that this actually works, and it could lead to lots of negative consequences for kids who grow out of it. So we're going to stop that. Well, Justice Beverly Lang from the UK has just said that rule will stand. The appeals against that rule, they flop. This is it. We're not going to the kids anymore. And you're seeing similar rules being passed in France. You're seeing similar provisions being passed in different American states, though not at the federal level yet, because Biden and Harris are still totally gung-ho on your kids when they don't succeed in killing them in the womb. So what has this revealed? This has revealed a limit of liberalism, which is good. This is worth celebrating. I don't want conservatives to be complacent here. We are still losing. Liberals have still won almost uninterrupted for the past 60, 70 years. But we've seen a limit here. The kids was just too far. Even in the UK, even in France, which is more liberal than we are, even in many American states, it was just a little bit too far. And I don't think liberals are going to succeed at totally normalizing your kids anytime soon. There is a limit to liberalism. They've still won. They've normalized murdering your kids. They've normalized a new definition of marriage, which is completely absurd. They've normalized obscene displays in the streets. They've normalized DEI in corporate America. They've normalized CRT in the classrooms. They've normalized the abolition of national borders. They've won so much. But at the very least, we can take some consolation that we've seen they're not omnipotent. There is a limit to liberalism. There are ways that we can win, that we can start to chip away. You know, I was talking about Star Wars earlier because Mark Hamill's a white dude for Kamala. Sometimes there's a little hole in the Death Star. And if you get that missile just right from the little X-wing airplane thing, maybe there's a chance that we can crack that edifice. Before we go, there's a really sad story, but it relates to what we've been talking about. It comes out of Texas. A Texas mother threw her baby in a dumpster, newborn baby. She threw her in a dumpster. This gal, Everilda Cooks Ad Salam, she's 18 years old, teenage mother, threw her baby in the dumpster. When asked why by police, she said that she didn't want her boyfriend to break up with her, so she threw her baby out. She's now said to be a flight risk. She's been arrested. She has no ties to America, so I guess she's some illegal alien. She's currently in jail with a $90,000 bond and, could face very serious prison time. Why? Why? Had she just killed the baby, not even abandoned the baby, but killed the baby 1 hour prior, she could have done it in a clinic throughout much of the United States. And not only would she not have faced any fines or jail time, she would have been celebrated as a brave hero. She would have been celebrated by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg, exercising her freedom. So it's completely incoherent. I don't really pity the girl because what she did was so terribly evil. And apparently she has no business being in the country anyway. But I can understand her confusion. Why is it that she would have been allowed to murder her baby in a very painful way 1 hour prior to her abandoning her baby and presumably leaving the baby to die? Why is one of those a horrific crime and one of those to be celebrated? To be celebrated by the president and the vice president and the transportation secretary and all the white dudes for Harris. Completely incoherent. When Mayor Pete is making his pitch, here's why you got to vote for Kamala. He's saying you got to vote for Kamala because you can do exactly the same thing, morally exactly the same thing that Texas mother did when she threw her baby in a dumpster. It's Tee Tuesday. The rest of the show continues now. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Knowles, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.